If you clicked on this video, you're probably looking to learn about what you're supposed to do on a certain boss or all bosses in Sunwell Plateau. There's 6 bosses in this raid, a whole lot of mechanics, and a bunch of trash. So let's not waste any more time and get right into it. So, to start off, as we usually do for these guides, we'll be talking about trash whenever something is really worth mentioning. And actually, probably the hardest packs you'll be fighting in this raid are right at the start. There's a lot of these huge packs filled with different types of mobs, and you need to know what to kill in what order before engaging them to not be stuck on those for hours. The kill priority on these packs is the Holy Priest, the Mage, Warlock, Shadow Priest, and then the Warrior. However, you can CC quite a few of these, and the ones you really want CC'd are the mage mobs. They are really annoying, they teleport in the middle of your raid, frost nova everyone, and do arcane explosion. So keep them polymorphed, and if poly breaks and they start running in the raid, make sure to focus them and kill them fast. Other than that, the other mobs should be easy. The next mob you'll come across is this patrolling scout. This guy has a huge aggro range, and as soon as you aggro him, not only is he linked to the closest pack, but he will also start running to the nearest protector and enable him. The way to deal with this guy is to mind soothe him, do a pull timer, and have everyone cast their biggest ability and have it land once the timer ends. Again, this guy is linked to the nearest pack, so they will automatically aggro as well. So make sure to mark them beforehand. And that's pretty much all you're doing until you reach the first boss. Okay, now for Kalecgos. This guy can either be really easy or extremely annoying to kill. It all depends on how organized your raid is for him. And in this video, I'll give you the perfect way to organize for him. First off, you're not just fighting Kalecgos, but also another boss in another realm along with him, Sathravar, a demon who's trying to possess Kalecgos. Your goal to defeat this encounter is to get both Kalecgos and Sathravar to 0%. Unfortunately, you can't just kill one of them and then the other, because they will both stay at 1 HP. And also because once one of them reaches 10%, they both enrage and start dealing a lot of damage to your tanks. So the goal is to DPS them roughly equally until they're both close to 10%, and then push them both at the same time and finally kill them as fast as possible. To DPS Kalec, it's straightforward. He's in the normal realm, and he's the one everyone will be starting on. But to DPS Sathravar, people will have to use portals that will appear periodically throughout the fight and go down into the spectral realm where you can face Sathravar. Thankfully, Kalec on his human form is in that realm and will help you not just DPS, but mainly tank Sathravar, which will be very useful, but we'll get to that in a second. The problem with those portals I just mentioned is not only do they spawn on any random player of the raid, not only do they force that player into the spectral realm, not only do they deal damage once they appear, but they also only allow 5 more players into them. And there's like a 1.5 second cooldown for players to click them. Kalec is not the best portal maker, that's for sure. So anyways, now for the organizing your raid part. The best way to deal with this fight is to split your raid in 4 groups of 6 people. It would look something like this. Each group needs to be balanced as much as possible in terms of healing, DPS, and having a tank if possible. If you're good with math, that's only 24 people. It's fine, just have 1 DPS act as redundancy. Now that you have your 4 groups set up, what you want to do is once a portal appears on a random player and force teleports that player into the spectral realm, have the people in that player's pre-assigned group all use the portal. 30 seconds later, another player from a different group will be force teleported. Have the 5 players in that person's group use the portal, rinse and repeat until both the bosses are dead. Now, that's the main mechanic of the fight, but there's also other stuff you need to worry about. Most importantly, I'd say, is the arcane buffet, a stacking debuff on players that stay in the normal realm. That's why you can't just have people stay in the normal realm for the whole duration of the fight, otherwise they would die rather quickly. Thankfully, if you follow the rotation I explained, it should never be an issue. The second most deadly mechanic is probably Spectral Blast. This is an AoE that is cast by the portal itself once it appears. It deals 5k damage to everyone around it, and I've seen a lot of people die to this, so make sure to stay spread from each other on the normal realm. On the other hand, in the spectral realm, you want to stay stacked to have chain heals hit as many people as possible. The boss does have a Shadow Bolt volley, but it only hits 3 people, so it's better to just stack in the spectral realm. Also, I talked about this, but Kalecgos on his human form will be out there in the spectral realm to help you tank the boss, and he does have quite a lot of HP, but not enough to last through the whole fight. You want to have him tank only when absolutely necessary, for example, on the groups where you don't have a tank. Otherwise, if you're a tank in the spectral realm, just make sure you have enough healers with you and taunt the boss as soon as you can to save Kalec's HP. Finally, if you're a DPS or a Restu Shaman, make sure to pop your cooldowns only when you're fighting Satravar. Don't just pop them right from the start on Kalec. Typically, Kalecgos dies way faster than Satravar, and to get him to 10%, you really want to have every DPS pop cooldowns on him, and use Bloodlust when your whole group is inside. And that's pretty much it. I know this fight is quite complex to explain, but this is honestly the easiest boss in the raid if you manage to get the rotation down perfectly. With the strategy I gave you, you should have no problems killing this boss, and probably even one-shotting him on your first progression night, honestly. So good luck on that. Moving on to Brutallus. This boss is very simple in theory, but in practice he's quite the tough encounter. This will put every aspect of your raid to the test, from DPS to healing to tanking. The boss needs to die fast, your tanks need to survive, and your healers need to keep everyone alive to succeed. But anyways, there's two main abilities to worry about in this fight. The first one, and most important one, is the Meteor Slash. This is an unlimited range cone ability that the boss uses about every 15 seconds, and this deals 20k damage split between everyone who gets hit by it. And the second ability is Burn. This is a debuff that the boss puts on a random player, lasts 60 seconds and deals more and more damage per tick. The last tick hits for 6200 damage. And most importantly, this spreads to other players if you run too close to them. So if you have this, avoid running towards other players. And you can ice block or bubble this. The last ability is Stomp, which deals a flat huge amount of damage on the tank that's currently tanking Brutallus. But there's nothing you can really do about this other than timing your mitigation abilities and spam healing your tank. Alright, so to deal with these abilities and minimize raid damage as much as possible, there's a couple methods you can use. I'll start with the one we were using in my guild, and that we had the most success with. You simply want to split your raid in two groups. One group in front of the boss and the other one on the back. Once you have one group soak 3 stacks of Meteor Slash, the tank on the other side taunts the boss, that group soaks 3 stacks, the other tank taunts, etc. Rinse and repeat until the boss is dead. If you get the burn debuff, run to either side of the boss. You don't want to take burn damage plus the Meteor Slash damage, or you're very likely to die. That being said, burn deals very little damage on the first few seconds of its application, so you can and should stay in front of the boss to help out if it's your group's turn to soak Meteor Slash. But when the debuff has 30 or less seconds left on it, just run to the side of the boss to be safe. The other strategy people usually use is very similar, but it involves using 3 groups instead of 2 and forming sort of a V shape. But everything is the same, it's just that you're using 3 tanks and you rotate your boss in either direction after 3 stacks of Meteor Slash. As I said, this seemed harder to execute for us, but you should experiment with both of those methods and see what works best for you. Naturally, if you're a melee DPS, you're not concerned with soaking at all. You'll always be behind the boss at all times. However, make sure to be spread behind the boss to not have burn jump from one player to the other. And remember to use Elixir of Demon Slaying instead of your regular flask for this boss, and for all the remaining bosses in fact. And if you're a tank, just make sure to communicate and do a cooldown on voice chat before taunting so that healers know exactly when to switch to healing you instead of the current tank. As I said, every bit of healing is crucial on this fight. And that's Brutallus. This is for many people the third hardest fight in this instance after Kiljaeden and Muru, and this will test every aspect of your raid, from coordination to DPS to healing and tanking. Just remember to warn your healers before taunting, move out to the side of the boss and avoid everyone if you have burn, and just pump as much DPS and healing as you humanly can. Next up, Felmyst. Felmyst is a 2-phase fight, the ground phase and the air phase, and those 2 phases will keep alternating on a timer until you kill the boss. Let's start with the ground phase. For this, you want to spread your raid in 4 groups, 1 melee group and 3 ranged groups. You want people in each group to stack on each other as much as possible and have the groups themselves spread at least 20 yards from each other. The reason for this is because of the ability Encapsulate. Periodically, a random player in the raid will be lifted in the air and start dealing high AoE damage around them. Everyone in the group where that player is needs to quickly run out from them, preferably towards other groups so you stay in range of healing. After that, regroup up and rinse and repeat. The second ability to worry about in the ground phase is Gas Nova. If you're a priest, listen up. This is an AoE that the boss casts about every 20 seconds, and this deals a huge amount of nature damage and drains a lot of mana on top of that. Thankfully, this can and should be mass dispelled ASAP, so if you're a priest, that's your job. Phase 1 lasts 60 seconds and then the boss will take off and start flying away. It's important to know though that you need to keep DPSing her as long as she's in range of you. Let the tanks and melee DPS deal with the other mechanics as long as the boss is still in range of you. But anyways, in phase 2, there's also two important mechanics to deal with. First, the boss will target a random player and start casting a beam that will chase them. Said player will need to run away from the beam, otherwise they will likely die if they get hit. As the beam is chasing that player, it will leave a trail behind it, and from that trail there will be a bunch of skeletons that will spawn. They don't have a lot of health and don't deal too much damage, so just have a prot paladin group them up and just AoE them down quickly. After Felmyst is done casting her beam, she will fly to either side of the room and then shortly after rush to the other side, leaving a huge trail of fog on the ground. If any player is caught in that fog, they will be mind controlled, and the only way to remove that from them is to kill them and combat res them. So in other words, don't get caught in that. The way it works exactly is the room is divided in 3 long sections, the top, the middle, and the bottom. She will kinda position herself first, indicating which section of the room she will cover in fog, so you have time to tell and run away in advance. Just run as one unit and then run back to the middle of the room once the fog clears to be ready to move to either side for the next boss's drive-by. She will do that 3 times in total before landing. Then the boss will land and it's rinse and repeat until you kill her. Again, pretty simple, 2 phases, 2 important abilities per phase. In ground phase, look out for Gas Nova and mass dispel that and run away from whoever gets Encapsulate. In the air phase, run away from the beam, AoE the mobs, and look at where the boss is standing to know where she will drop the fog, and it should be an easy kill. Next up, it's time for Eredar Twins. But before you get there, you'll have to go through a gauntlet of mobs. So if you wipe at any point in this gauntlet, everything will respawn and you'll have to go through this again. The important part of this gauntlet is the exploding imps. Those get summoned from the end of the gauntlet and will run to your raid and explode. You want to have a tank always stand in front and soak the explosion away from the raid. The mobs you have to fight here are also quite annoying. Remember to always face them away from the raid, as the Vanquisher and the Soulbinder have a cleave ability. Focus the Mana Fiends first, as they have an arcane explosion and also drain mana from all players in the raid. And then I would focus the Life Shaper and then the rest of the mobs. Just remember to not rush this and play it safe. You don't want to wipe here and waste tens of minutes because of it. Alright, now for Eredar Twins. This fight requires 3 tanks, 2 on Sacrilege, the Shadow Boss, and 1 on Alethes, the Fire Boss. Alethes will periodically drop Blaze, a patch of fire on her tank, so if you're tanking her, move away from that fast. As for Sacrilege, the tanks will need to deal with Confounding Blow. This will deal 7 to 10k damage to her current tank and drop their aggro temporarily. This is why the off tank must always be below the main tank on Sacrilege, otherwise you risk having her run to the raid like this. So DPS, watch your threat and always stay below your off tank. At first, you want to have everyone focus Sacrilege, the Shadow Boss. The way you want to be positioned for this fight is to have the bosses tanked away from each other at the bottom and have every ranged DPS and healer stack on the top of the ramp in line of sight of the tanks and the boss. The reason for this is because of the ability Conflagration. This is something Alethes casts on someone with high threat. It's a 4-second cast and whoever gets targeted by this needs to quickly run away from the raid and everyone else. So if you're a ranged DPS or healer, run to the door upstairs. And if you're a melee or tank, run below where the healers and ranged are standing. Don't worry, you will not hit them. After you get conflagged, you will be disoriented for a few seconds and suffer a huge amount of fire damage. Healers, you need to top off whoever gets conflagged. If you can ice block or bop this yourself, go for it. For everyone else though, I highly recommend having a PvP trinket equipped and be ready to use it. Over time, you can probably skip using this, but especially on progression and with pugs, you'll be doing yourself and others a huge service by having this. Remember to use a health stone after you use the trinket to top yourself off and not die like I did here. To help out detecting who Alethess is casting her conflag on, there's a few weak auras you can use, but the best way I found out is to have Alethess on focus target and look at who she's targeting. This makes it very easy to know who she's gonna cast her conflag on, and gives you enough time to react and move away. One last thing for Alethess, she sometimes receives the buff Pyrogenics, which increases her fire damage by 35%. You can and should have priests, mages, and shamans dispel this from her, so do it as fast as you can. Once Sacrolash is dead, Alethess will gain some of her abilities. You want to have everyone jump down and stack right behind the boss, as close to your tank as possible, but not too close to not get hit by the fire patch. The boss will sometimes turn to a random player and cast Shadow Nova on them. If you get targeted by this, just don't move and stay stacked with everyone, as you want people to be affected by this, and especially your tank. So if you see that the tank is too far away from you, try to go right below the boss so they receive it and it drops their flame touch stacks. Moving on to Muru. This is a two-phase encounter. Phase 1 is an endurance fight where you'll be fighting Muru himself and a bunch of adds that will spawn across the room. And phase 2 is a DPS race where Muru will turn into Entropius and you'll have to burn him down as fast as possible while healers pump out heals into the raid to keep everyone alive. So the way people used to do this back in the day is to assign different groups to different portals and have everyone spread across the room. That's very inefficient. The way everyone does it nowadays is to have everyone except the tanks stack in one big group while the melees DPS Muru when they can and run out before the void zone appears, then back again when it disappears. This zone appears every 45 seconds, but more on it in a moment. As I said, phase 1 is an endurance fight. You want to survive the waves of mobs and manage them correctly before getting overwhelmed. To do that, you'll be following a simple priority system. There's 3 types of mobs that spawn in this phase: the humanoids, the big void sentinel, and the small void spawns that appear after you kill the void sentinel. Basically, you want to prioritize killing the void sentinel, followed by the void spawns, followed by the humanoids, followed by Muru himself. However, there are some things you can apply to make killing all this happy crowd easier. First off, the humanoids will always spawn every 60 seconds in 2 groups of 3 at the entrance of the room and on the opposite side where the ramp to Kiljaeden is. So have 2 tanks stood at either side ready to grab them. Before the void sentinel spawns, there will be a big portal indicating where it spawns. It's highly recommended to have a prot paladin tank this one and keep it close-ish to the raid, but not too close. The reason for this is because once the sentinel dies, it spawns 5 void spawns which can and should be enslaved by warlocks. At least the first set of them should. The rest will need to be killed fast. But most importantly, never let the big void sentinel run into the raid, because it has an AoE and people will start dying very fast. As for the humanoids, they need to be stacked on top of Muru by their respective tanks. They don't have any cleave or AoE, so don't worry if you see them around you. However, the mages cast Fireball, which makes it annoying to move them, so whoever can interrupt that should do it. And they also have a buff called Spell Fury, which makes your abilities instant. Mages spell steal that. There is actually a 4th mob that spawns, but that one is very easy to deal with. Every 45 seconds, the large void zone will appear around Muru, so melees run out of that fast. And right as it appears, there will be 8 Dark Fiends that will appear, which will explode after a few seconds. They can, however, be killed by 1 mass dispel, so just assign a priest or 2 to doing that and you should be good. And that's phase 1 essentially. You want to make sure you time your transition correctly to have have as little mobs left as possible before Muru dies. If this requires stopping DPS and letting one more set of ads spawn, do it. But just don't spend forever in phase 1 either. The moment phase 2 starts, everyone should spread and let your tanks build a bit of aggro. Then pop all your CDs and go ham on Entropius. There's 2 abilities to worry about in phase 2. Darkness, which is a small void zone that appears under a random player. This will also spawn 1 Dark Fiend, so mages, priests and shamans dispel or purge that. And the second ability is Singularity. This will also spawn on a random player and then travel across the room, tossing any players around and dealing damage to them. Just move away from this as it moves. But the most important part about phase 2 is that Entropius casts Negative Energy, a chain lightning type ability which hits 3 players at first, then adds 1 more player every 12 seconds. That's why Entropius needs to be killed fast before you get overwhelmed by this ability and it becomes unhealable. And that's Muru in a nutshell. You'll probably wipe here more than on any other boss, so good luck on this. But for now, let's move on to the last boss. And that's Kil'Jaeden. Kil'Jaeden is a 5-phase fight, each phase adding more and more abilities to deal with and making the encounter progressively more difficult. To help you deal with some of those abilities, you'll have Kalecgos periodically enabling one of 4 orbs in each corner of the room, allowing you to summon and control a dragon, which will help you heal your raid, give them a haste buff, or shield them from a one-shot mechanic, which we'll get to in a minute. But at first, you'll have to summon Kil'Jaeden. To do that, you need to kill 3 Eredar mobs around the Sunwell. They have quite a few AoE abilities, so it's not a bad idea to spread them apart and kill them one by one. But if your raid can handle it, you can also just stack them. Once they're dead, you want to have your raid loosely spread around one side of the room to maintain maximum chain healing, but also deal with the mechanics we're gonna talk about. Once Kil'Jaeden is summoned, phase 2 begins. In phase 2, there's 4 abilities. Soulflay, which is the main ability of Kil'Jaeden. This is used on the person with the highest threat and deals 3000 damage per second. Legion Lightning is a 2-second cast chain lightning-like ability which can jump to 4 players, deal 3k damage to them, and reduce their mana. However, the range on this is huge, and you cannot really avoid having it jump. Fire Bloom, however, is the reason why you want to be spread. This is a debuff that the boss puts on 5 random targets, and it deals 1.5 to 2k damage to the affected player and any other raid members in 10 yards around them every 2 seconds, so everyone stays spread for this. The last ability in phase 2 is Shield Orb. This is a flying cloud of shadow that spawns above KJ and travels in a circle around him. They don't deal a ton of damage, but they can quickly get overwhelming if you leave too many of them alive. So as soon as you see one spawn, have all your ranged burn it down quickly. Once KJ reaches 85%, it's time for phase 3. In phase 3, the boss gains 4 new abilities: Sinister Reflection, Shadow Spike, Flame Darts, and Darkness of 1,000 Souls. Sinister Reflection is used on a random target, and it will create 4 copies of the player that have some of the abilities of said player. But the most important part is that they deal a ton of damage, so the tanks need to quickly pick them up and group them so that the DPS can quickly burn them down. Shadow Spike is an ability that the boss casts for 30 seconds, and it summons a Shadow Spike that travels towards a random player and explodes upon impact. If you're targeted by this, you can move out if you have room, but you risk running into other players targeted by this or that have Fire Bloom on them. So I suggest just staying put and healing people hit by this. Flame Darts is an ability that the boss uses instantly on everyone in the raid. This causes 1.5 to 2k damage on impact, but if you have people close to you, it will also apply a 50% reduced movement debuff for 15 seconds. Yet another reason to be spread. However, this can be resisted if you have the haste breath buff from a dragon, but we'll get to that in a second. The last ability in phase 3 is Darkness of 1,000 Souls, aka the big AoE. This will basically one-shot everyone in the raid. Thankfully by now, you should have one of the dragon orbs active that you can use. Just assign 2 to 4 players to use these orbs as soon as they're up, and shield players from the big AoE before it happens by using the Shield of the Blue ability. Don't use it too soon though, because the shield only lasts 5 seconds and KJ charges the AoE for 8 seconds, and you can only use this twice before the dragon dies. The other abilities on the dragon are Breath Revitalize and Breath Haste. Basically, you should use this as soon as you can. But before doing that, you need to ask everyone in your raid to stack in the middle in front of the dragon. Players with the Fire Bloom debuff should not stack though, and wait until it expires. Missing one breath or two is not a big deal, so don't worry about it. Once KJ reaches 55%, it's time for phase 4. In phase 4, KJ gains one more ability, Armageddon. This will summon meteors that will start falling from the sky and land after 8 seconds, dealing 10k damage to anyone on impact. Thankfully, you can tell where a meteor will land by looking at the ground. There will be a hellfire-like effect indicating the impact area. There will always be 3 meteors active from now on, and will only stop spawning during the darkness of 1,000 souls. Also, KJ will now summon 3 shield orbs instead of 2. Remember to kill those fast. At 25%, Envina will sacrifice herself and apply a 25% holy damage debuff to Kiljaeden. All 4 dragon orbs will become active at once, and the boss will start using Darkness of 1,000 souls on a shorter cooldown. At this point, it's a DPS race where you need to kill the boss in less than 3 to 4 minutes, otherwise you will run out of orbs and dragons to shield you from the big AoE. It's also worth noting that there will be 5 Armageddons active now instead of 3 at all times, and they will keep spawning during darkness. Thankfully, the shield also protects you from them, but it's also not unlikely to have one blow up right as the shield expires, so be wary of that. But that's the whole fight. Many abilities to worry about and a lot going on at once. However, this boss is easier than Muru according to many players, and if you killed Muru, you should generally have an easier time on KJ. Good luck on the epic loots. And that's pretty much everything you need to know about Sunwell. There's a lot of information and I almost certainly forgot some stuff. So if you notice something missing or a mistake, please let us know in the comments. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to give it a like and subscribe to the Classic WoW Curios channel for more content like this. My name is Numidia and I will see you guys in the next one very soon. Bye for now.